So I've got a question for you. Do you think Tesla still has a chance to get to 20 million cars delivered per year? Is there a path for Tesla to 10x their current 2 million run rate? Well, Elon Musk just replied to a post on X saying it would be a very hard climb, but it's still doable. Today, we're going to walk you through several possibilities and paths that may still see Tesla achieve this goal. While most think it's now quite unlikely to be done by 2030, let's see how this might unfold. I've got Brian White joining us. He's got his own YouTube channel called Future Ozza. Welcome, Brian.
Herbert, this is a very exciting topic and precisely what I cover. This is going to be an exciting one.
Right. This is your channel. What you've been doing for several years is you keep track of all of the gigafactories. You keep track of the production, the deliveries. You have forecasts, which you've done very well every quarter. You're right on the mark. So I wanted to, break this down in terms of, how many gigafactories would they need to build? There's the unbox model. Is this now impossible to hit 10 to 20 million per year, or is there still a path to get there? So we'll get there. Let me show you what the tweet was. But basically, Tesla Economics came out and wrote this out yesterday. It said, whether Tesla reaches a point in time of delivering 10 to 20 million Teslas on an annual basis isn't a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Now, in his tweet, he doesn't say 20 million, he says 10 to 20, and he doesn't give a date. He doesn't say 2030. He just says, whether Tesla reaches a point in time delivering 10 to 20 million Teslas on an annual basis, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And he has an associated video. I'll play that shortly, but Elon replied to him, and he says, it'll be a very hard climb to 10x output, because right now the run rate's 2 million. It's doable, but it's an immense amount of work. So he's still very, very positive about it, still kind of claiming that this is still the goal. I'm going to go ahead and play this and watch this. But basically, yeah, it's a semi carrying a ton of Teslas, nothing fancy to it, but it's happening. What do you think, Brian?
That video of the car carrier leaving Fremont, if you've ever been to Fremont, that is a nonstop occurrence. If you've ever been to Giga Texas, it is a nonstop occurrence. And if you've ever seen drone footage of any of the factories, it is the same. It is a long road. It is an improbable feat. It would be unprecedented. Nobody has ever made more than about 10 million cars in a year. So could they do it? Sure. The path is, as he said, narrow and, in my opinion, narrowing by the month for 2030. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. For Toyota to make 20 million in 2030 is impossible. For Ford to do it, the odds are zero. They don't have the plan in place. They don't have a strategy to get there. If demand somehow spiked for their products, they could not ramp quick enough because they haven't made any of the plans that would allow them to get there. And while the odds are low for Tesla, the odds are non-zero because they have the plans in place and there is a roadmap, and we'll get into that here today.
Okay. Let me share a little bit more of the information. I don't think there's a lot of new info here, but it still sets the stage a bit. So there's an article written about this. And then, so in 2023, Tesla hit 1.808 million vehicles in 2023. It's a record-setting number, right? So obviously we're just growing exponentially. And if you look at the curve, it is exponential. Now, there's a self-imposed target of 20 million vehicles to be sold by 2030. They announced that several years ago, and people are now getting concerned, right? I think the vast majority of people I'm talking to are saying that this is now something that they don't see happening anymore because Giga Mexico was delayed. They pushed off the Gen 2 car, and then Cybertruck is going to take some time to grow, despite all the cars actually just hitting out of the park, right? Model Y, Model 3, Cybertruck, very, very successful cars. But for Tesla to achieve 20 million vehicles per year, they're going to have to grow 10 times what they have today. And so you get in 7 years, can you 10x what you've done? Now, so one of the questions I'm going to ask you, right, is the unboxed model, which is definitely required, and the compact car, right, you needed to do this because the unboxed model would actually cut the square footage required per factory by half. So it's part of these, equation. And then Elon said, it's going to be a hard climb to 10x the output. It's an immense amount of work, but it's doable. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. So to address this a little bit, just looking at the factories we already have today: Fremont, Berlin, Shanghai, and Texas. What is the maximum output of those factories? I think it's pretty safe to say Fremont would struggle to get meaningfully beyond 500,000 without a serious bit of construction out there to rebuild the factory, not just reconfigure, but rebuild. Shanghai is only 9 million square feet, produces 1 million cars. That is not the actual benchmark, because the Model 3 is not using gigacastings and the Model Y is only using rear castings. If you were to build a new factory, which, by the way, all the new factories are new factories, just switching to the castings reduces the square footage you need, gets you more cars per square foot. So the million for that kind of benchmark is a little bit low. Texas is just as big as Giga Shanghai, bigger when you factor in the extra buildings outside. Then you've got Berlin is 2/3 as big. It's still very, very big. The factories we have alone could get you 3.5 to 4 million cars. If the lower end of the bound is 10 million cars, making them the world's largest manufacturer, they're already 40% of the way in terms of space that they have built today. And that's not including the extension to Giga Texas, which is not that big, about 1 million square feet, but it would add, and it's probably less than that, it's probably 700,000 square feet, but it would add more output per square foot, because we have every reason to believe they're using the unbox method, which is faster, cheaper, quicker. I mean, it's just better in every way, though it has some new challenges. So if we're already looking at 5 million output from existing square footage, now we just have to figure what new square footage is needed. We know that there is a planned expansion in Berlin. We don't know if it'll happen. There's been a little bit of pushback on the ground from the very small community around it. We know there's plans to expand with another car factory, presumably in Shanghai, though definitely in Asia. And there are other candidate countries on the list, to say nothing of Mexico, which has already been purchased and permitted. They just have to build it. So if you're going to build a factory that's just as big in Mexico, but just for the unbox method, you're not looking for an output of 1 million. You're looking at a minimum of 2, potentially 4 million from a single location. How many 4 million square foot facilities or 4 million output facilities do you need to reach 20 million? Well, like 3. You need 3-ish. So just adding Berlin, Shanghai, and Mexico could already get you within spitting distance of 20 million. And then if you add India or Indonesia or any of the other strong candidate countries, a lot of countries have come out and said, we are in talks to get a factory here. If 1 or 2 of them come to fruition, the roadmap is there. Could they actually do it? That's another matter. You need every single piece. 99% of a car is not a car. You need all the batteries, all the blinkers, all the brakes, and some parts are easier to get than others. One saving grace is the cost of lithium is now back to its the price it was before the speculative run-up a couple of years ago. That allows a lot of opportunity. LFP batteries, which are conflict material free, no cobalt, doesn't even use nickel. Those batteries have gotten abundant, both in terms of what's actually out there being produced and, more importantly, what can be produced. Those no longer need to be a bottleneck the way the high nickel chemistries were. And we have some preliminary indications that Tesla would be using the LFP in the next gen, the Gen 3 platform car. So all of the pieces are there. The question is, how do you actually get there? And the answer appears to be the roadmap we have is going to get us a big chunk of the way there, and we only need to add a few more pieces, and we've got 7 years to do it.
Okay. Not 7 years.
Okay, 6. Well, but by the end of
5 and
20,
a half.
if they have all of 24, 5, 6, 7,
I
8,
see.
9, and 30. You've got till
Okay.
the end of 30.
Gotcha.
So you've got almost 7 years. if they hit a run rate of 20 by the end of 2030, I think
Mhm.
people would
To
agree
win.
that they met the goal.
Okay, I'll give you that. Do they have the money to do this? So let's say they have to build 3 mega gigafactories.
Mm-hmm.
Are they the same
Yes,
size gigafactory as Texas? They're gonna be bigger than Mexico. What size do they need to be?
I would say they absolutely need to be that big. These absolutely need to be $4 to $5 billion facilities that are ginormous, that are 9 million square feet ish. Uh, so if you look at something like Shanghai, which is outputting a million on 9 million square feet, that means you could, if it takes half the space to do twice the output, that
Mhm.
gets you 4 million on a facility that size. There is, even if you get rid of the paint shop, even if you get rid of all the bots that were doing the stamping and welding, you still have, there's still a minimum size constraint, and I think they would be still need to make truly ginormous factories to make it
Okay.
happen. Do
Yeah.
they have enough money?
Yeah.
And the answer to that appears to be yes. They've got quite a pile of cash. If you need, let's say you need 4 factories, let's say they're 5
Mhm.
billion, that's $20 billion.
Mhm.
The cash on hand is still accumulating every quarter.
Mhm.
So they've got the pile of cash they've got, plus all the cash that's coming in over the intervening years. And we're seeing a lot of revenue showing up in new places like stationary storage. That
Mhm.
those mega packs are going to fund it. We've seen that these ZEV credits are still hitting all-time highs. We were told over and over from 2018 on that these are one-time uh, bits of revenue. They're not recurring. Everybody's going to start making their own, and then these credits will absolutely disappear. And it just hasn't been the case. Just yesterday, yesterday or the day before, Stellantis announced we are no longer going to buy ZEV credits from Tesla. It sounds like a principled move, but it sounds like a dumb move, because the alternative to buying your ZEV credits from Tesla is buying them from a smaller manufacturer who has fewer to sell, or just paying the fine. Hey guys, if you really hate Tesla so much that you want to pay more and have a less profit left over for your shareholders, go for it. But the shareholders might have something to say about that, and you might find yourself out in the cold if you don't get smart about it. And that's fine. Someone else will buy them instead.
Okay. So you've said price is fine. The gigafactories are, you outlined that. What about car segments? And so is there enough Model Y sales? It's probably going to hit its maximum. You got the Model 3 hitting its maximum despite them, the two being revised. You got the Cybertruck, probably smaller numbers, maybe a million if we're very lucky. And then the Model 3. Is that enough? Do they need to introduce a Cybervan? Do they need to introduce another segment before you can get to 20 million per year?
So I think the answer is yes. They need more models, but I believe, and this is speculation, but it's been my speculation for years, and a more popular speculation lately, that the next gen platform, the Gen 3, the compact, will not be a car, but it'll be a philosophy. It'll be a platform that is many things. You and I have talked about this. It
Hmm.
could even be modular in design, where it could be taller or shorter or longer or whatever it needs to be, anything apart from wider. And who knows, maybe it could also be wider, but it could be the hatchback, it could be the coupe, it could be the minivan, it could be all those things. A lot of minivans, like the minivan I had was a Nissan Quest, which was built on the Altima platform. Now, the Altima is a mid-sized car, but it's the same idea. I don't know how small Tesla would go with their compact, but I suspect that their idea of compact is not necessarily what Europe thinks of when they think of a compact. We call those subcompacts. So I don't know if they would go quite that small, or that they would need to. What they need to do is hit the price. And if the batteries are cheap enough, and batteries are still trending down in price, you could have a American compact, which would be, a smaller car in Europe, but not the smallest, and it could still be 25,000, because it is getting simpler and simpler to build, and the cost savings are on the table. They just have to be snapped up. Other companies are struggling with their cost controls, but that's because they're still trying to build the biggest, baddest, meanest thing out there. Well, what they need to do is be refining their engineering. If you look at uh, GT Mustang Mach-E and compare it to a Model Y performance, you'll find that the Model Y beats it in every regard. It's a little quicker. It's got a higher top speed. It's got all that. But it's also almost 600 pounds lighter than the Mustang. That is evidence of design inefficiency. Why is your car 600 pounds more than the Tesla? It's not 600 pounds better. It's got, what, 2% more range? But that's not much when you consider it's got a 20% bigger battery. So there's a lot of opportunities that Tesla's taking advantage of. The big thing is going to be, in terms of output, the unboxed model, the gigacastings, the 48-volt architecture, the steer-by-wire, likely the drive-by-wire. All of that's going to make it so simple to build that they're going to fly out the door quicker than Jeeps in wartime.
Love it. Okay, so you talked about segmentation. Let's talk robotaxi. So Franz von Holzhausen, who's a designer for Tesla, has for many years now, since 2018, has been talking about his epic design, and he believes it's going to be his masterpiece, which is the robotaxi first, autonomous driving first designed vehicle. And he's been talking about it. So it sounds like it's definitely on track. It was mentioned at the biography that this is something that they're working on, and it continues to be brought up. So if robotaxi is designed, number one, and then FSD version 12 is looking like it's working out, maybe 2 years, 3 years, it becomes a thing. What do you expect to happen? Tesla will continue to make 20 million cars a year. This, then it could probably, my guess, my estimation is that it's going to be able to support itself. And so they may not need to sell the car. They just make it and it generates revenue on its own, way more than a profit is per year now. And so then they'll just spit it out. Now, if it becomes robotaxi, then they don't need to create another segmentation. They'll just build factories and build this thing. What do you think is going to happen? How will that unfold?
So I've seen a lot of people speculate, hey, in the future, nobody will buy cars. I point out that we are hunters and gatherers, and a lot of us gather. A lot of people don't want to take their car seats out. They will pay the premium for it. And if the premium is, I have to buy I have to buy a car cheaper than my last car just to own the thing that I have. A lot of people will do that. It would take a generational shift to end the desirability of an automobile. Doesn't mean it can't happen. And when you have robo-taxis or just fleet vehicles at all, shared vehicles at all, you can get by with fewer vehicles. It doesn't change the total output per year because vehicles will leave the fleet that much faster. Instead of it being your car for 20 years, if you rack up 5 times the mileage, it'll be off the road in 4 years. So I could see early on Tesla choosing to retain a lot of their own vehicles, but you can't retain all of them. You still need that instant revenue, that instant payout to get the money back so that you can build the next 2 cars. So I think there will be quite a period, even if robotaxi is as successful as some of the more bullish people like you and I think it will be, it's going to still take maybe a decade for the full shift in personal travel philosophy to catch up with it. So I think, especially early on, it would be a mix. Tesla might start by keeping 1%, 5, 10, 20%, but that sales would be the overriding factor. And even if they say, look, we're going to roll out as many of these as we can on our own, they still want to move units. So as long as they've got the production capacity and there's demand, they will continue selling, even if that 25,000 becomes 30, 35,000. We really don't want to sell it, but if you're going to give us that much margin, we'd be crazy not to. And all of those sales fuel the next sale, the next factory, the next project. So I think robotaxi will only help. I can't see a downside in it in terms of it hurting.
Okay, so let's just do a quick summary of what we talked about today, right? So you talked about the factories, and you talked about the output required for each factory and how many 3 new factories need to be built. We talked about the cost that they have to have this cash to be able to build these factories, which we believe that they have the chance to do that. And the timing wise, in the last you called it 7 years, 6 years, that they will still be able to build 3 factories, but within that time, as long as the run rate is 20 million by the end of 2030. We talked about segmentation, that they will need to have multiple cars, but because of the unbox model, they have this potential to create different segmentations faster and quicker than they have been in the past. We talked about robotaxi. So tell me, what is your probabilities? What's the likelihood that they will still hit 20 million per year by 2030? Self-imposed, is there a path for this to still happen? You said non-zero previously, but give me a real number.
My real number is 10%. I think there's a 10% chance that they would hit a number like that. You and I talked previously about the Monte Carlo, method of looking at probabilities. And in those, you include every possibility. You include possibilities that get you down to 0 units. You include all kinds of force majeures, natural disasters, global problems, alien attacks if you want to get real crazy. But you'll come out with 20, 30, 50,000 possibilities, all of them loosely interconnected. And then you get this bell curve of probability. And I think the middle of that curve says we're at 10 million by the end of the decade.
Oh, you're still at 10 million.
At the highest probability, I'm at 10 million, and I think the 20 million is a 10% chance, because every month that goes by, it gets harder. And I think the economy will recover, rates will come down, all that will happen. And I feel like Tesla needs to be poised to pounce when that does. And if the factory is still a year or two out when that happens, it leaves the door open for BYD to get those sales instead, because they have the low-cost cars that are okay, where Tesla would be making something that's truly amazing. And a lot of people have said, well, compacts just won't sell in the US. And as you and I have discussed many times, the US is not the world. There's a big world out there. But compacts do sell in the US when they're compelling. And Tesla doesn't make a car unless it's compelling. It would be affordable, it would be stylish, it would be interesting, it would be fun, and it would be affordable.
Okay. I have a higher percentage I would give to, I wouldn't say 10 million. I'm more at the 12 to 15 million. And the reason is, Tesla, at this point, are masters in efficiency of building factories and automating everything. And then if you consider that their bots are going to be there, humanoid bots to support the industrial robots, this is going to be kind of like just absolutely, he called it a dreadnought, right? Just automated. So the chances for them to producing even more, lower cost, which then increases sales, it's a lot higher.
And I think, I think that a lot of the stars will need to align for that to happen. And it's still counting on some leaps. I think getting past 10 million, the reason that's an obstacle in my head is because it's really never been done before. 10 is about where any car company, no matter how good, well, and Ford and GM have had some years where they're getting close to it. VW's had some years where they're getting right around there. It is the 4-minute mile. So we got to break through it and prove that it's very doable and move on from there.
Nice. Brian, you're very, very smart. Thank you so much. Absolutely great answer. Glad that I asked you of anybody. I don't think anybody else can give this kind of analysis as you did. Thank you so much. Follow him on his YouTube channel, Future Ozza. Brand new branding. He used to be called MyTeslaWeekend. Now he's Future Ozza. So his future means he thinks about the future. The Ozza is like the probabilities, right? You tell me what
from A to Z and back again.
That's what it is. I love it. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate you. Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.